Hi everyone, today's Dharma Talk. This is my very first proper Dharma Talk, and it's a Dharma Talk that I've been wanting to give for quite some time. And today the Dharma Talk is on thanking the darkest times in our lives. So I do want to give a bit of a disclaimer on this one. So this one is going to be covering some pretty heavy topics. These topics could range from addiction to abuse to assault to trauma, anything in that kind of realm. I'll also be touching on transsexuality as well and gender issues. Or gender experiences, I should say. And I, as a queer person, I will definitely be talking about this in a sensitive light. However, in terms of trauma and any of those experiences, I'll be talking about my own experiences. But please, if that is something that triggers you or you're feeling these experiences still very real within yourself, this might not be the Dharma Talk for you to listen to. So please protect yourself, look after yourself, and I'll talk very sensitively around these topics. However, please be aware that these will be topics that we will be covering today. So today's Dharma Talk is one that I've wanted to give for a really long time, and I feel like it is the Dharma Talk that I have to give. It's the first proper Dharma Talk that I have to do. And for me, I've been thinking about this Dharma Talk for over a year. And it came from a talk I heard, well, a couple. So this one leads from the story of Mara and Buddha. So I'll tell you the story of Mara and Buddha, the shadow deity. If you haven't heard that story before, it's one of my very favorite Buddhist stories. But also it goes back to Ajahn Brahm, who's the head of Western Australian Buddhist Society. I love him. Happy 70th birthday for the other week, Ajahn. And it was a Dharma talk that he was giving around a case that he worked with a young woman over in another country. And it was a really impactful Dharma talk on me, the outcome of that. And I'll share that with you as well. And I'll go into also some of the personal experiences that have really made all of this come to light for me and allowed me to work with the shadow within myself. So to get a base understanding, so shadow is what we all know what a shadow is. So a shadow is something that we just can't quite see, or it's the reflection of something that is just out of line. So if you think of a shadow that's on the floor in front of you and it's from a person that's standing around the corner and you don't know who is there, but you can see the shadow, it's kind of scary. We just can't see what's there yet. So we don't know, it's like Schrodinger's shadow. So we don't even know if it's someone that's about to attack us or something that's our friend. You know, we don't really know these things. We can't see the shadow for what it is yet. And with the shadow deity in Buddhist history, so we go back to the story of Mara. So there's a lot of stories, kind of recollections of how Buddha worked with Mara, but traditionally Mara was the shadow deity that tested Buddha when he was trying to reach enlightenment. And a couple of the different types of stories go that Mara came and had her children, and she threw different ones of her children at him, and they were all around darkness, and you can't do this, and you're not good enough to reach enlightenment, and they really tested him. However, one of my favorite recollections of Mara and Buddha go back to when Buddha, for a time when he was trying to reach enlightenment, he went to sit in a cave. And in this cave, he had a devotee that was manning the front of the cave, and it was a big, sandstone cave, and it was high up in the mountains, and he'd gone so he could be alone and to meditate and to find enlightenment on his journey. And the devotee's standing at the front, and Buddha's out the back of the cave in a corner and meditating and finding, the ultimate experience to try and reach enlightenment and discover more about himself. And the wild horse that was his mind, and Mara, the shadow demon, comes to the front of the cave and demands to see Buddha. And the devotee's like, who do you think you are that you can come to this cave and that you can interrupt Buddha? How dare you? You're a demon. You're a bad demon. Go away. And shuns Mara from the cave. So Mara leaves. The next day Mara comes back and again demands to see Buddha. And Buddha is meditating deeply in the back of the cave, and the devotee said, I told you yesterday, how dare you come here? You are not good enough to be in the presence of the amazing Buddha. He is seeking enlightenment. You are a demon. Go away. Never come back. So Mara leaves. And then on the third day, Mara returns and again demands to see Buddha. And it's at this point that Buddha is coming out of a deep meditation and hears Mara at the front of the cave and walks to the entrance and says, oh, no, stop. It's Mara, I'm so glad that you came. Come in for tea. and then asks the devotee to go make them some tea, and they sit and drink tea together. And it's at that point that Buddha sat with his shadow self, sat with the shadow demons and the darkest, shadowest sides of ourselves. This, because we are just one. We are full of shadow and light. And if you can sit with all parts of yourself, that is when you reach true enlightenment. When we see everything within ourselves for what it is. It is just part of our divine spirit. And unfortunately, parts of ourselves get a bad rap, and they become bad and things that we need to get rid of. And, these are parts of ourselves that we should be ignoring because, oh, that's dangerous, that's bad, that's unacceptable, all these types of things. And yes, there are going to be certain areas that we probably shouldn't fulfill, and I'm thinking around really serious topics, but, for the average human, like any of us, anxiety, sadness, having emotions, having an emotional response. I remember I went through a long phase where I would actively say, I hate emotions, and I would hate the feeling of happiness, because growing up, I had a lot of anxiety and depression, and for a time there was fairly bipolar, and I knew that if I felt happiness, because I would feel manic happiness, I actually hated that because I knew that I was about to fall. So I didn't want to be happy. I didn't want to feel happiness because I knew that there was an end to it and a big heavy decline that felt so horrible that I didn't want happiness. So even happiness became part of my shadow. And it took me a long time to discover what happiness and joy felt like, because through those experiences and knowing the extremes that my body and mind and state could feel, it had this big wall in front of me. And I felt like I had turned to stone, where if someone said, I love you, or I care about you, I'm here for you, all those really lovely things, I couldn't feel I didn't want to feel that. And actually, and I know that a lot of you will feel it, where you're just like, ugh, icky, no, go away, don't tell me you love me, ugh. And it's that, it's such an uncomfortable feeling for us to feel love and joy and happiness, and to use beautiful words, and to understand that every single moment is wonderful. Because it is wonderful because it can teach us something, or we can experience something, or we can share something with someone, even sadness. These are wonderful moments because we are learning and experiencing living. I know that's a pretty big thought and it's going to test us. However, that's part of the journey and that's part of our learning. I'm a student of Buddhism, and I will always be a student of Buddhism. Even if I become a teacher, I am still a student forever. But it's when we accept the shadow and we see it for what it truly is, that we then reach enlightenment, and then we truly understand ourselves. And so going back to the story that Ajahn Brahm was sharing with us, and you can find it on his YouTube channel. He's fantastic. It's the Western Australian Buddhist Society. Ajahn Brahm, I love him. He is amazing. He's such a beautiful Buddhist leader and such a kind, brilliant human, and he's hilarious. So he was telling a story. He does a lot of work over in Asia, and he was in, I can't actually remember which specific country it was, I apologize. However, he was over there. He looks after a number of international Buddhist societies as well. And there was a girl in the hospital, and she had been through so much trauma, and terrible experiences had happened to her, her body, her life, and pretty much she was, a lot of the time we would generally encapsulate that they're a bit of a destroyed human. They've been so heavily broken down that it's hard to even imagine that someone could rebuild. And he was sitting with her, and they'd said, Ajahn Brahm, we've had healers, we've had priests, we've had everyone go through and try and talk to her, and we think this is the end for her. We don't know how to help her anymore. Please just sit with her and help her. And so he's like, okay, well, I can give it a crack, but if everyone's had a go, I don't know if I can reach this girl. And he just sat very quietly and just sat with her. And he said, child, you don't need to tell me your story, your history. You don't need to share that with me. I'm just going to sit with you. But she started sharing some of her stories with him and the terrible, terrible things that had happened to her. And he sat there in silence and meditated on it for a moment. And then he said, I was shocked by the response that came out of my mouth. But I said to her, I thank them for doing that to you. I'm so thankful that that has happened to you. And that's the opposite response that you would expect when you're sitting there talking with someone that's had horrible, horrible things happen to them, for someone to say, I'm so thankful that happened to you. And our immediate reaction is that, oh, what a terrible person for saying that. However, and even he had a bias that he had to then inspect and meditate on, where he then went, oh, why did I have that reaction? And he knew that he'd had that reaction because he then followed up by speaking to her around, if that hadn't happened to you, you would not have this superpower now that you can go and help others that such terrible things have happened to them. And that's a really big thought that landed on me really heavy. And again, disclaimer, I'm going to talk about some heavy topics now around assault and sexual abuse. So when I was 17 and a half, I was sexually assaulted by a friend, and this person, this boy, it was my first experience with a guy, and they did what they wanted with me when I was in a state that I was not able to defend myself. And it was a terrible experience, and it was my first, and it really took its toll on me, and I'm still healing from it. I'm going to be completely honest. There's still parts of me that I'm sure that I'm having knock-on effects with, and I'm still going through them and examining them. At the moment, I'm doing EMDR therapy to continue working on it. And I've done a lot of different things to kind of work through it over time. But for a long time, I used to just say I'm broken, and that it destroyed that whole part of me, and that I'm a destroyed person. I remember breaking down to a friend one night where I'm like, it's broken me. I'm incapable of having a good sexual relationship with someone and feeling intimate and actually knowing how to act in those moments and how to give over myself to just feeling and enjoying those moments. It all became a bit of a theatre piece. And until I heard Ajahn Brahm give that Dharma talk, it didn't truly land for me. I'd started seeing the silver lining because I knew that it made me a stronger person, because I know that I could rise up and I can now speak passionately and strongly and be there for people. And only truly anyone that has experienced those things can talk to someone truly to understand what they've gone through. And even then, every experience is unique. So at least we can stand with you and hold space for you. I'm not going to say that I know exactly what you've gone through, because I know that every experience is different, and that they're horrible. It's terrible. It's unthinkable. However, I thank him for raping me now, and that's a big thought that I've worked through. And I apologize if anyone has been triggered. Again, I love you, I care for you. Please always reach out, LifeLine, therapy, anything. Please get the help that you need. If this does trigger you, and I apologize if it does. However, I think it's a really, really big, important thought and exercise that we have to go to, that we can thank the darkest parts of ourselves for them happening. Because if that hadn't happened to me, it sent me on, because that happened, I then went into so many areas where I just started learning, studying, trying all these different forms of therapy, fitness, movement, learning so deeply about my nervous system, my brain, chemistry, everything. It took me on this epic journey of learning about the human mind and trauma and how to heal the body from trauma. And I'm still learning, and I'll forever learn, and it's amazing, but it set off this thing within me. And on top of that, I then had to, because my initial experience of having a sexual relationship with someone, like that opportunity to learn and discover that organically was taken away from me, I then actually had to actively learn and understand and develop an understanding of what it was to have an intimate relationship with someone. And like that took years, and there's levels of intimacy that I'm still working on, and I'll forever be a student in that area, and that's fantastic because I get to experience that journey. And again, I thank them because it made me think more deeply about my sexuality and who I am as a person and what I enjoy in those moments and what my body enjoys and where my mind goes and how to relax my mind into those moments. And if a terrible thing hadn't happened, I would never have gone on that journey. So I thank it for doing that, because it made me this like elevated version of what I would have been if that hadn't happened. And it kind of took me onto this other path where I then, that lay the foundation by thanking one of the darkest moments in my life. If it hadn't done that, if I hadn't experienced that darkest moment and thanked it and loved it, and now I nurture it and I see it within myself, and I know that at times it needs a bit of a hug. It needs me to just sit with it. Sometimes parts of your path within you just need to be sat with and just need to be, grieved. And it's not good, bad, or ugly. It's just what it is. It just exists. And it led me into also then discovering Matt Kahn, where Matt Kahn, for anyone that hasn't come across Matt's teaching, he's the love revolution. For me, he was part of the path of Buddhism as well, because he talks about love. And for me, again, going back to those sticky feelings of going, ooh, you love me. Ooh, that feels really weird. That's really awkward. Please don't say that. Like, that's really nice that you feel that. And I love you, and I will do everything, and I can feel how much I love you. And outwardly, that is something I can do. But having that come back at me was just, oh, go away. Don't say that. That's really nice. Let's just get on with our day. Those moments. And you'll feel it. If you're like me, you have those moments, like, what that feels like. But Matt has the love revolution, where he then also introduced me to the topic, and that, like, love revolution is simply saying I love you to someone and to yourself. And that's super hard. That took over a year for me to develop that skill, and particularly being able to sit there with your partner and say I love you and look them in the eye and be okay and comfortable in that moment. That's quite a heavy exercise. I challenge you to enjoy that exercise and give that one a crack. Because feeling love and joy and happiness, I always thought growing up, we went through some pretty hard times, my family, and we dealt with some years that were darkened by addiction and violence and things like that in our household. And we rose out of that like a phoenix. Our family rose out of that. However, the impact of that was that those feelings were all a bit like, oh, I love you, all those nice, happy things. I kind of thought I was a bit too tarnished to truly be like a really nice person to be around, or to be a happy, joyful person that would feel happy and joy and love and to feel all these beautiful things. I always thought that was a bit hippy-dippy, and that was not something that was part of my journey. Because I thought that had been kind of switched off, and that light bulb had been shattered, and that you can never turn it back on. So going on that journey, and then because I had seen that, and then it forced me to learn about myself and to go on and watch these YouTube channels of all these different things, and to take up Buddhism, and to begin these journeys, and find yoga and fitness and movement and ninja warrior and all these different things and all these different people. That only became like evident to me because I'd gone through the darkness. So the darkness created the best fucking stuff that has ever happened in my entire life. And that's why it's so amazing. And I find that darkness are the little moments that are offered to us that allow us to burn off karmic seed so much faster than any other moment. So for any Buddhist, that we enter the world, this divine experience in this shell, this body, this round of the samsaric cycle, this is where we have different karma that comes with us, and then karmic seeds. And you have to learn those lessons and try and burn off that karma throughout this lifetime. And if you don't, you return in another form and you continue to learn and experience. However, I think going through darkness for me allows you to have those supersonic moments where it's like dialing up. Say if you think of a gas stove and like just living life normally as like a small simmering flame where, it's not doing much. It's just keeping the water like boiling just very lightly. However, the moments of complete challenge where they test you to your core as a human, you feel like you are totally broken, that you can't continue, that you don't know how you're going to live the next day. Those moments are when the gas is turned up to its max and you are boiling off the karma so fast, because in those moments you are learning so much. You are having so much feedback. You are having so much opportunity to find where your bounds are, and you are going to realize that you are so much stronger and so much more amazing and so much more capable than you ever would if challenging times didn't happen to you. Because if you've lived through sexual assault or addiction, or any kind of trauma, or any childhood issues. If you hadn't gone through that, you wouldn't know how amazingly strong you are. Because you are. You are so incredible. You're sitting here watching this today and you're hearing and listening and you're having thoughts. And if you didn't know these experiences, you then wouldn't be also able to sit there and help someone and hold space for someone that is in the depths of where you may have been previously. And that is a unique skill set. That is a gift. And it's just so interesting. And I even find, like, more recently, I got to take it to a new level where me and my partner, a couple of years, it's been about 2 years now, but we had gotten engaged and we were on this journey, and I thought, okay, finally I found love, I found my forever, all of this kind of amazing. And I was already on this Buddhist journey and I was discovering a lot about myself, and I thought I was doing really great. And, you know, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm going in the right direction. My life has momentum. Things are happening that I never thought possible. But in the back of the mind, always that fear coming from these dark moments that we're still learning around, that was like, you know, the rug could be pulled out from underneath us at any time. And I had that fear that I really hoped that never would happen. And we were standing in the kitchen one night, we were engaged and everything, and we'd started planning the wedding and, you know, inviting people and all those things I never thought would ever happen to me, because, oh, how could that ever happen to me? And they said they've had a thought and it hadn't left their mind, and they thought maybe they were trans. And this woman that I was going to marry, and everything just kind of really, it was a super heavy moment for both of us. And I love them so deeply. But I found within myself I was having a, can't believe it, you know, and grief and sadness kicked in. And I sat on the couch with my two best mates like that weekend, and I was sitting there and I was just like, I feel like I'm now on this ship and I didn't agree to get on it, and we're going in this direction, and it's a journey that I never wanted to go on with people, because I've always been queer. I know, grew up in a very queer house, like family, and all my friends, and I love everyone for all their journeys, but a trans journey for me is so big and so involved for that person and every part of their world. And for someone to go on that journey, they are so strong, and I never thought I would actually be strong enough to go on that journey with them. I didn't trust myself to go on that journey with them, because it was so big. It felt bigger than me, and it felt bigger than my strength and who I was. And I kind of had this, and I found a lot of bias within myself that I didn't think was there. I'm a queer person. I've been bi since I discovered when I was around like 15, and I accept all these parts, and I have friends that are trans, and I had, you know, all these people around me, and I was very respectful and loved it, and that is their journey, and they're amazing, and I've watched these people go through these different experiences, and that is so big, and hat off to them every time, because they're just so strong. They can change their entire world, and to have that real, like, just even sit with the thought that you have been born in the wrong body. I am so blessed that I don't have to sit with that, because that is so big. And I had never thought I could sit with that. And then it entered my world. And we went through a number of weeks, months, where I was depressed. I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh no, my happy ending is going. I didn't know. And I think the biggest fear for me that came out of it was that they're going on this journey and they're going to become this person. They're going to become a man. And they were a man, but they were going to grow into their male body, pardon me. And what if they didn't love me? What if that new person fell out of love with me? What if they had a chemical change that stopped them from loving me, because them loving me was so important to me as a person. And my future and this story that I'd built for us in my head, and this future, everything I had planned. And I felt that all kind of crumbling and being taken away from me, and all this old shadows all started stepping out and yelling at me and being, of course this would happen to you. This is a bad thing. You're forever, of course you were never going to have this happy ending, and all these challenges, and all the shadow deities were yelling. And then I had to come back to the story that Matt Kahn was telling that was so simple and beautiful, and it was love whatever arises. So it expanded on the thanking the darkest times of my life that had made me realize I was strong and powerful and amazing, and then expanding to love whatever arises, which really future scoped everything for me, where it was, I can either choose for this to be, I can apply the label of terrible, sad, horrible, anything like that, see the ending of something, or I can just love whatever arises and continue to be with the person that I love, and then we're going to have this amazing future, and we can still do all that, and it's just going to be, I don't know what's coming. But it's going to take me on this journey that is so incredible, and then it made me learn so much more again, that you sit there and you're like, this is expanding me as a human. So I then chose to love whatever arises. And since we've changed that journey, we've dialed it, kind of where the change is going, we've dialed those changes back, and now we're living in just a neutral zone, and all these things. And there's going to be bits of sprinklings from over this column and bits here, and that might change in time, and I might change in time, and I might go on a journey. I don't know. But I love whatever arises, and we need to love whatever arises. And if you put that there and do this exercise with yourself, thank the darkest parts of yourself, because without that you wouldn't see your light. And then if you love whatever arises, you get to go on these amazing journeys, which is incredible. And so with that Dharma talk, really coming back and just summarizing for us, try the exercise of thanking the darkest parts of you. And I think to help a little bit, think of them, what they do with ancient Ming vases in China. So from ancient Chinese kingdoms, they have these Ming vases that exist. And if one gets broken, they take all the pieces and they rebuild the Ming vase, keeping it together with gold. They pour gold into the frame and build it up. And the Ming vase is even more beautiful than it ever was before. And the light glows through the gold and shines off the gold in the cracks between the parts that were broken. And it's stronger than it was before, because gold is so strong. And it's so beautiful. And it holds you together. And without the gold in you, you wouldn't be the amazing, divine, brilliant human spirit that you are. I see the divine in you. You're amazing. Namaste. I love you so much. Have a fantastic weekend.